me start by reintroducing the participants. This is Miss Lewis. She is a second grade general education teacher. My name is Melinda Rosopoulos, and I'm conducting this second post-observation video conference as a requirement for my supervision of instruction course. I would like to begin by thanking Miss Lewis for her continued participation in this experience.
My pleasure.
Now let's begin. Miss Lewis, as with the first observation, you and I met prior to the second observation and selected a mutually agreed upon date and time for me to conduct the second observation. During the pre-conference, I asked you what lesson you would be teaching. Can you please explain what the lesson was?
Sure, we had discussed that I'd be teaching a vocabulary lesson.
That's right. We discussed that the observation would take place during the literacy block and that you would be teaching a vocabulary lesson.
That's right.
During the pre-conference, we also discussed that the focus of the observation would be based on the concept of clarity.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Just to review, clarity means to cause mental acts within students' heads that will result in their understanding or being able to do something. We discussed the importance of clear instruction and clarity in your lesson in order to provide not only knowledge, but true understanding of concepts.
Yes.
During the pre-conference, you and I agreed upon using the concepts of clarity known as presenting information and checking for understanding as the focus of the observation.
Yes, that is correct.
We reviewed several explanatory devices that may be used to present information. These were simple cues or progressive minimal cues, highlighting important information, translation into simpler language, analogies, diagrams, pictures, charts, using your smartboard, overhead transparencies, audio and video recordings, models, and graphic organizers. Can you please explain which explanatory devices you use to present information?
Sure. I presented the vocabulary words and the definitions with the smartboard, and I also used pictures. Then we practiced as a class reading the words and the definitions out loud. And then I taught the students a gross motor movement to help them remember the definitions.
That was an excellent way to present information. Now, what I hear you saying is that you utilize verbal cues, for example, verbally stating the vocabulary word and the definition, nonverbal cues, such as presenting pictures for each vocabulary word using your smartboard, as well as kinesthetic movements, which provided students with a physical model to help them remember the definition.
Yes, that's right.
I really thought that was a fantastic way to incorporate visual, auditory, and kinesthetic modalities to account for the various learning styles of your students. It's a great job.
Thank you.
I especially liked the gross motor movements. What an interesting technique that was.
Thank you.
My favorite was the kinesthetic movement for the definition of the word snug, meaning too tight. Now, if I remember correctly, it was, my clothes are snug. They are too tight.
Yes.
I also noted how engaged all of your students were. Every single one of your 22 students was focused and on task. They all seemed to genuinely enjoy the gross motor activity that you incorporated into your vocabulary lesson.
Thank you. I enjoyed the exercise as well.
I really think that's a nice change from having the students constantly doing seat work.
I agree.
Now, moving along. Another concept of clarity is checking for understanding. It's very important to recognize when students do not understand the material presented, and it is crucial to address students' confusion and not to ignore situations where students may require further explanation. Can you please explain how you checked for understanding during the vocabulary lesson?
Let's see. I checked the students' body language, like frowns or smiles, to determine if they were confused or if they understood the definition.
Okay.
Blank stare is also a good indication of confusion.
That is an excellent technique. However, not all students give cues in the same way when they don't understand a concept. Some may not even give cues at all through their body language. For this reason, which I'm sure that you know, we cannot always rely on students' body language to indicate when they're confused.
That's very true.
Now, how else did you check for understanding during your lesson?
I also did frequent comprehension checks by reviewing previously learned definitions.
Okay, that's right. So what I hear you saying is that you looked for indirect and direct clues to check for understanding. You assessed body language, such as frowns or smiles, and you also went back and reviewed the definitions of words from the beginning of the lesson after about every 2 or 3 vocabulary words that were presented.
That's correct.
Comprehension checks are a great way to review, and also a great way to check for understanding in order to determine which students were still having difficulty remembering the definitions.
Thank you.
Now, in thinking about your lesson, something came to mind. Can I make a suggestion?
Sure, I'm open to any suggestions if you have any to help improve my lesson.
That's great. Okay. So, I was thinking, when teaching your students the gross motor movements, what about providing students with a definition first and asking them to come up with their own kinesthetic movement for the definition? What do you think about that?
I didn't think of that.
Okay.
Thank you. That could also help me check for understanding to make sure the students truly understand the definition.
My thoughts exactly. Now, I also think that this will help students remember the definition even more, since they are associating the vocabulary word with a kinesthetic movement relevant to themselves.
I'm definitely going to try it. It'll be interesting to see what my students come up with.
It's wonderful. Sounds like a plan. Now, there is one other method that I think deserves mentioning that you might want to try out sometime.
Okay, what is it?
Okay, so this one involves teaching students to produce signals to indicate whether they understand. For example, use of the thumb signs is a common signal by which students can indicate their level of understanding. So in this system, a thumbs up indicates full understanding. A thumbs sideways indicates that the student is mostly following along, but there is some confusion. And the thumbs down indicates that the student does not understand the lesson at all.
That's an interesting suggestion. I think I might try that in my class. I'll have to give that a try. Thanks.
You're welcome. Now, Miss Lewis, overall, I think you have a great handle on the concept of clarity, which is evident in the ways that you present information to your students. You also check for understanding throughout the lesson, which is a great way to ensure that your students understand the material being presented.
Thank you.
Now, just to review the suggestions that I made, we discussed having your students come up with their own gross motor movement to help them remember the definition of the vocabulary word. And we also discussed teaching students thumb signs, such as the thumbs up, the thumb sideways, and the thumbs down, to indicate understanding.
I look forward to trying these techniques. I really think they would work in my classroom.
Great. That's good to hear. I think that you did an excellent job. And once again, I do thank you for volunteering to participate in this experience and for welcoming me into your classroom for both observations.
Thank you for the supervision. It was a great learning experience for me, and I look forward to improvising any teaching techniques that you suggest.
Great work. Keep up the great work, Miss Lewis. Thank you.